All right, so we're here with Mark Blackburn to talk about some advanced wedge tactics, because you've done a lot with Max Homa over the last few years. He's improved a lot. I'm sure you've got some good stuff to share with us here.
There's some pretty simple ingredients to mastering the wedges, to have wedge wizardry, and I think we just start with a concept. And a concept with a distance wedge is that you want low launch, which yields high spin. So great wedge players, their ball's peaking at somewhere between 50 and maybe 70 feet. Their ball's not coming in really, really high. So that's important because it allows you in a variety of conditions to have something that's very predictable. The ball comes in and goes dum-dum. It's not zipping back. It's not essentially coming up, ballooning and coming up short. It's a very low launching, high spinning wedge. So there's a couple of things. We talked about the low launch, high spin. So how do you get low launch? Well, you get low launch with shaft lean. So if you look at a lot of the research that's been done and looking at the best wedge players, somewhere around 15 degrees of shaft lean is a pretty good number. That's about a grip length. So that basically means that my lob wedge is 60 degrees. If I've got 15 degrees of shaft lean, I'm delivering about 45 degrees of loft at impact. The best players are consistently delivering the same amount of loft and lean. There may be some deviation on the angle, but about the same through the wedges, so that now they're controlling their distance really on how much they're rotating, turning their body, or how much energy they're putting in. They're not trying to do different things. One of the things that's a killer on a wedge is to be kind of a lot of cocking the club down, loads of drag, it gets really hard, it changes the attack angle, it's not great. So we want shaft lean, and one of the questions often is, well, if I have shaft lean, isn't that going to dig? Well, no, not necessarily, because the best wedge players are using a lot more rotation as opposed to slide, which kind of gives more of that dig, which makes it really hard to get steep. So they're using a lot more of a rotational motion of their body, not sliding down the target. The other little nuance is that in the backswing, there's not a whole lot of wrist hinge. The more angle we put in, now I've got to dump that out. That often leads to a lot of throw and toss at the bottom, and the best wedge players, they're just not doing that. So one that comes to mind, you know, visually is obviously Steve Stricker, not a whole lot of wrist set in the backswing. Someone like Max Homa does that, something very similar. That allows them to get their setup to control their amount of lean, and now they're turning back and using their rotation so they can carry those beautiful alignments and lean through the hit to kind of get that low launch, high spin. So with a 60, I'm looking to launch this ball about 27 to maybe 28 degrees. I might be fractionally lower, but there's a point at which if I get too much lean, I get a lot of slipping off of the face, the spin loft doesn't really match, and I'm not going to optimize what I'm trying to do. Now, I've got an RPT ball I'm going to use with the Rapsodo. Titleist now has a ball where I can actually measure my spin. I'm getting my launch angle here. This is a great way to practice so that you can consistently get low launch and high spin. Okay, so that was a nice launch angle. We have some nice wedge pins here at 10-yard increments. The goal is to develop a baseline technique that is very robust. Understand, okay, I've probably got 3 swings with a wedge, one that kind of comes back. Some people call this around 730. I would say just where the club is about to hinge. I've got one where my lead arm is about parallel to the sort of ground here, shaft's kind of working up, and then I've got what I would call my full wedge swing, which is about 3/4, and then how far do each of those go with my 4 clubs? Those are my baseline yardages, and then I could add a little bit more or take a little bit off to kind of get the ball to go shorter or further. I'm probably using on a scale of 1 to 10 between 60 and 70% energy, because as soon as I start to swing harder, now I'm going to change probably the conditions of launch. I might get more tilt, that lays the shaft back more, that makes it harder to be predictable.
So if somebody just watched this video, they're probably curious, what's their launch angle, right? So they're gonna hop on and test that.
Yep.
Because launch is I'm guessing, is that if someone goes out and starts doing this, what we just did, if they can control their launch, it's gonna help a lot of things.
Yeah, because then if the launch angle is the same, so sub 30,
yep.
Think about this is your wedge, so your wedge here is a 60. when you lean the shaft, you're delivering less loft, so the ball's going to potentially go further. You're going to have a little more distance. As soon as I lay the shaft back and I get it up in the top of the face, I'm delivering more than 60 degrees. Ball's not going to go anywhere. I'm going to have no control. So we're trying to deliver, the learning here is important, is the same amount of loft every time. Then you don't have this big deviation in distance. It's just how much do I turn my body and how much am I moving around, so to speak, to control the distance. When this is ever changing, and then you're using different speeds of body rotation, well, now you've got two variables controlling speed. That gets really hard. Whereas if I'm here and I keep this, it's doing the same thing every time, very easy to then only have to regulate distance with one thing, which is the rate of rotation of my body.
Is this the game or the drill that you have your guys do? Is
Yeah,
it
a lot. I
work
mean,
on
I
launch
think
angle?
launch angle, we build a launch gate. You can there's lots of places online you can find the math for what's for a 60-degree wedge. Where do you need your launch gate to be for a low launching shot? We use them in the bay. We put string across, rope, try and get people to launch underneath it, because conceptually it's weird for people. But once they see that, all of a sudden it becomes a lot more predictable. The two common errors I see in people with wedges, they swing too hard, so that the harder you swing produces more spin. They also have horrific loft control, and loft and face, there's some similarity there, so they get dispersion and distance issues. Learning to manage that and understanding that you're not trying to hit it hard, that's a big deal with a wedge. You're trying to hit it the same every time. Now there might be occasions where you need to max it out or hit one from the rough, but all in all, you want to be able to hit it within a 2-yard window if you're an elite player, maybe 1 yard, the same every time, and it needs to be really predictable. And you just see the best wedge players back and through. It looks almost like an underarm toss, but it's so predictable that they feel like they're going to try and hole shots. And a lot of times you see them hitting wedges to 2 or 3 feet, just nothing for them. They feel like
that's a 2-yard window.
Yeah, generally speaking, if we're training, like that's kind of the sort of tolerance that they're looking in, because they're trying to get those balls close. And remember, if you get to major venues, they put the pins in these quadrants and areas where it's a small area. You've got to be really precise. And most of the time, I'd say the best players are only really attacking flags with wedges. Those are the things that allow people to attack golf courses and score really, really well. Anytime that they have a lot of these, they're able to take advantage of it and get the ball close to the hole. So club golfers just don't spend nearly enough time on their chipping, pitching, distance wedges or putting. Everyone wants to hit it further. Yes, we see the correlation to the best players in the world as ball striking, but the club golfers don't have that skill set, generally speaking, but this is something they become proficient at because they're going to have such a high distribution of shots from inside 140 yards. So it makes more sense to be able to practice that. We're going to hit a couple here. I've got a 60. I'm looking for that sort of 28 to 27 degree launch, trying to make sure I'm very much using not much hinge, lots of rotation, carry that shaft lean through the hit. So I want the same shot to come out every time. So we're going to set up here, kind of ball in the middle of the stance, slightly open stance that allows me to turn and rotate through. So I'm going to set up with a bit of shaft lean, handle kind of higher so that makes it easier. Make sure I don't get, if the handle's too low, I get a bit of dig. Handle a little higher, and then I'm just going to turn back and through, see if we can get nice low launch, high spin here. So now that's come out nice and low, very predictable. It's kind of at the flag there. What did we get on our spin numbers here?
Let's see.
We got a 30-degree launch angle. We got a little bit of spin. I hit that a little bit on the heavy side. You can see how the smash isn't super high. If the smash gets too high, obviously now that can be problematic and not predictable. So we're going to try another one there. I'd hit that a little heavy, which probably only went about 73 yards. I'd expect this to go about 80 yards with the...
And what did your launch at on that?
I'd like to be about 27. That was about 36. We'll try another one here. So open stance, that allows me to clear. If you're someone that struggles to turn, by opening the stance and flaring the foot, you'll be able to turn as opposed to slide, which would tilt you, lay the shaft back, cause you a high right miss, some inconsistencies. So again, I've got the ball kind of middle of the stance towards a little bit back, shaft lean, stance is open, and I'm going to turn back and through, carry that lean through the hit, low launch for high spin. So that one was hit a lot crisper, and again you can see it's coming out with a very nice low launch. The ball's kind of falling left pretty straight, so there's not much deviation in my dispersion. That allows me to really attack the flag, which is what we're looking at. So now obviously that was better. That was my 28 launch. My spin went up there. That's what we're looking for. I said around 80 yards. We got the 80-yard carry, so that's kind of in my area there for a wedge. And now if I needed to hit it 85, I could swing a little bit harder. But what I'm looking for is that predictability every time to do the same thing. And if I was to kind of go down to, let's just say, a 52 wedge, what you would see, my gap wedge, you would see a very similar launch. So because I'm leaning the shaft, same sort of relationship, I'm going to get a shot that comes out lower, but obviously is going to go a little further. So if I make the same length swing with this club, probably going to get something in a 100, 105 range. So same ingredients, nothing's changed. The only difference is the loft of the club, but I've got to trust that and then just swing.
Really
so
nice.
Now that one's come out low. I've pulled that one a little bit, but you see it's got that very similar launch condition. It's a lower launch. So that ball's carried, I said, around 100, 102. That's kind of what we're looking for. So I've got more distance, but I haven't changed the technique. Now, obviously, my launch came down because I've got left loft. I may have hit that one a tickle low on the face, not quite right. But again, it's the technique is staying the same regardless of the club. Shaft lean is our friend. We want shaft lean. We want to manage our angle of attack with rotation. If I get shaft lean and I start sliding a lot down the target line, I'm going to use more of the dig part of the club, and that could get steep. But if I'm able to rotate and turn and move up and around, now I'm able to manage my angle of attack. So that's really important. And if you look at the qualities of good wedge players, very much in a rotational manner, not much slide. They don't tilt their torso. They're covering the ball. They're pinching it with the shaft leaning forwards. Now they get these launches that are very, very low. So we're going to try one more here with the gap wedge. So again, ball kind of back. I'm going to aim far enough to the right so I don't overcook this one. And then the same technique, back and through. So that one was hit beautifully, really nice. Again, the right strike, it's a better shot than the one before it. Held its line. You see how it's just kind of falling left. And obviously, conceptually, if you have a little bit more shaft lean, it's obviously easier. You're going to produce a little bit more of a draw. That's helpful because obviously to cut it, the face has to be open to the path. So now you might be fighting your, if you lower launch, right? So for a lot of people, you see the best players, it's fairly straight, might fall a little bit left. But conceptually, I think that's important for people to understand, is that like thinking a little bit of a draw, ball's back, you're rotating, leaning the shaft, face will be slightly right because you're leaning the shaft and turning, the face is going to be stronger, that'll get the face close to the path. Now you get a ball that starts right, and this is going to be really durable. If you imagine that was into the wind, all of those shots, yes, they'll go a little shorter, but they're still going to fly through the wind, whereas a typical club wedge player, if I was to demonstrate, would have the ball up. They're thinking, oh, I've got to hit it high, and then they do lots of this, and they're hitting a wedge like this, and they're off their back foot. The ball doesn't really go anywhere, and it's ridiculously high, comes up short a lot. That's okay on maybe a front pin, but that's not very durable. And we want something that we can use to a front, to a middle, and to a back pin. We want to get that ball working towards the hole, and that's where that lower launch, higher spin is really, really important. And we're also trying to hit it from a contact perspective. We're trying to live in about the bottom 4 grooves. We don't want to be hitting the club up here because obviously there's layback, that's no good. That's not what we want. We want to produce this, more of this type motion. A premium wedge, this is a Vokey. You lose about 20% of your spin after about 750 strikes, research based. So you need to be replacing these, especially your lob wedge and your sandwich, which you're probably going to hit a lot. So obviously you want a premium golf ball. We've got one here in a Titleist RPT ball. You want fresh grooves. Those things are going to help you, especially produce the spin and the consistency. And the other thing, really important when you're using a wedge, is a towel, preferably one end wet, so you can get all the debris out of the face. That's going to improve your friction. When you get stuff that's all over the face, sometimes that reduces your friction coefficient and that makes it harder to spin the ball. So we want to make sure we got a dry, important. Some sand might actually help you spin, but generally dry face, nothing in the grooves. You want a towel for that, that's important. And then you're just going to make sure the ball is dry and you're off. Tighter lies are better. Club golfers don't like that. They love this rough type lie when the ball's sitting up. Unfortunately, that's really hard to produce any spin. You just kill your friction coefficient, no good. So we want tight lies is what great wedge players want. They want the ability to be able to get that ball off the top, pinch the ball, low launch, yields high spin. We want that lower flight, so we're very predictable, produces spin, but it's also durable in a variety of conditions. And if you can do that, you can basically have the basis of becoming a very competent wedge player, and obviously less physically demanding to be good with a wedge than say it is with a driver. So being in position, having a chance to score, that's where the wedges can help you. If you have an error, put the ball back to your favorite yardage. Ideally, I'd encourage most club golfers to use 4 wedges. That then gives you a bigger spread, and most club golfers are going to have so many shots inside 140 yards. Becoming competent at it, feeling like you can put your ball within 10 feet, that gives you a really good chance to get up and down for a par, maybe make a birdie on a par 5. That's kind of the key to scoring, and that's, you know, people say the wedge is the great equalizer for a reason, but there are certain things that you can do from an ingredients perspective to have the right recipe to hit great wedge shots over and over, which is going to help you lower your scores. Lowering your scores allows you to enjoy your golf more.
So let's sum it up. Here's what I'm going to do now. I've got 4 wedges. I've got 3 shots with each wedge.
Yep.
I'm using the same like tempo and the same turn through each of them.
Yep.
I have to control my loft.
Yep. Dynamic loft delivery. Yep.
And then I'm going to be launching them sub 30.
Yeah, that's ideally. And if you think about whatever the loft on the club is, you're trying to deliver like around 15 degrees is good. So if you've got a 60-degree wedge, your delivered loft should be about 45. So now when you go to a 56, take off the yardage on that, now you're going to get that same. It's just the math. I mean, all of that is a relationship of just doing the math. There's a little variability, and every person may have less or more shaft lean, but again, you're trying to live in that same amount of loft to maximize your spin loft, which allows you to then produce the same shot consistently, and that gives you control, and control is what allows you to attack a golf course with confidence, knowing that, hey, I'm able to put this ball close to the flag so my putter can help save me.
Mark, this is awesome.
You got it, man.
I got some work to do.
You got it.
Yeah.